Establishing the ideology of Islam is first and foremost. Only then can any other aspect of Islam be addressed.
Each messenger has came with a single call. O my people, worship Allah. You have no other Lord but Him.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. May the peace and blessings of Allah be on His Messenger Muhammad. We will continue in this episode our discussion about the importance of beginning the call to Islam with the testimony. La ilaha illallah, there is no deity except Allah. In the previous episodes, we mentioned 3 points regarding this matter's significance. Insha'Allah, in this episode, we will further continue our discussion. Islam, as Allah's religion, came to govern people's reality. It is not a religion with only theories meant to be learned, memorized, and understood without any action. That is why Islam does not establish any rules or laws, nor prohibit anything in communities that do not truly submit to and worship Allah, and it only does so when reality necessitates it. Only when people fully and willingly submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does Islam begin to establish the laws and legislation that govern society. This was exactly the case with the first Islamic society in Medina. It is important for Islamic advocates and all Islamic groups to understand that when they seek to establish Islam, they must first begin with the ideology. The beginning must always be with the issue of the fundamental beliefs in the absolute authority, sovereignty, and supremacy of Allah, which is summarized in the testimony, La ilaha illallah, there is no deity except Allah. This testimony must be given its proper value in society, and that is to give complete authority in everything to Allah alone. And so, whenever a few people embrace this religion, they are considered the Islamic society that can establish and apply Islamic laws and culture within itself. Those who strive for Islam must begin with the issue of establishing Allah as the sole authority in the hearts, minds, and lives of people, which is essentially putting the core belief of Islam, there is no deity except Allah, into practice. Those who do not do this, they assume that the current Jahili reality that the people are in to be a suitable foundation upon which Islam can be built. They attempt to address the needs and issues of the society by trying to find solutions through Islam. However, they fail to realize that the problems that societies face are fundamentally due to their rejection and deviation from Allah's religion. Therefore, attempting to superficially apply Islam to a Jahili society will never result in establishing Islam as Allah intended. The fact of the matter is that people must conform everything in their lives to Islam, changing within themselves whatever contradicts Islam so that they can be in harmony with the truth. Surely, Islam cannot be subjugated to the whims of people that are deviant from the way of Allah. Has Islam really lost its value with these advocates for them to sell it so cheaply by compromising? Islamic groups that fail to begin with the ideology wrongly assume that Islam and its tenets can be applied on top of a Jahili society with all its present values and standards that are against Allah. Some of these Islamic groups attempt to gradually introduce Allah's laws and legislation in a society that does not give any authority or recognition to Allah's religion. And there are other Islamic groups that begin with confronting people's traditions and cultures that are contradictory to Allah's commands. These groups, so as not to alienate people, do not fully confront people's ingrained Jahili beliefs and concepts. What they fail to comprehend is that any compromise is in fact an admission of defeat. And there are yet Islamic groups that do not begin with the matter of the fundamental beliefs of Islam and the testimony, but hold firmly to the final revelations and commandments of Islam. They fail to understand the phase nature of application in the methodology of Islam. This last group is the furthest from the way of the messengers of Allah, peace be upon them all. They not only bypass establishing absolute authority and supremacy of Allah in the hearts and minds of the people and inspiring devotion and servitude to Allah, but they immediately attempt to enforce the Islamic laws. They confront any obstacles in their path with force and aggression. As a result, the first people to reject these groups and confront them are the general public. These groups must attempt to force a Jahili public into being obedient to Allah and accepting His laws, but their methods only result in tainting people's perception of Islam and distancing them from the truth. The methodology that such groups rely on is the role of jihad in Islam, but jihad does not take place until after the establishment of an Islamic state full of people who love to obey Allah. Jihad is only valid when an Islamic society is formed, a society that is nurtured on the core beliefs of Islam and the proper ideology. This society must be in devotion and submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It must be eager to establish the religion of Allah in all aspects of life, in a pure form that is rid of any remnants of Jahiliyyah. Only when such conditions are present is jihad commanded by Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the Muslims in Mecca, "Restrain your hands from fighting and establish prayer." An Islamic group that has no authority over itself nor over people in general is in a state of weakness. It would be in the same situation that the initial Islamic group was in during the period of Mecca. As a result, it becomes mandatory to restrain the hands because the goal of the Islamic group at this particular point in time is the invitation of people to the religion of Allah. The Islamic group must fulfill this duty with wisdom and good instruction, with trust and certainty, and with love, affection and sympathy. During periods of weakness, restraining hands and being patient in hardships will undoubtedly result in more people hearing and receiving the truth. It will allow people to fully witness the truth of Islam. It will allow them to clearly understand what it requires from them without any possible misconceptions born from the wrongful aggression that has never been part of Islam. We conclude this episode with our opening. Callers to Islam must adhere strictly to the path that Allah has set for us when conveying His religion. It is the same path that we, the proclaimers of the truth, are holding steadfast to. It is the same path that has been the divine tradition throughout the history of the messengers, peace be upon them all. This path requires that the primary and initial matters in the call to Islam should be the ideology, the testimony, La ilaha illallah, there is no deity except Allah, and clarifying the proper meaning of this testimony so that it can be truly applied in life. And our last supplication is praise be to Allah, the Lord of all worlds. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.